please. Come to order, Judge. Thank you, Sheriff. Y'all may be seated. Members of the jury, the punishment phase works much in the same way as the guilty or not guilty phase. The state will go first. The defense will have an opportunity at that time, after the state rests, to present evidence should they choose to. They don't have to. With that, is the state ready for the punishment phase of this trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready? Very good. Court, recognize Your Honor. We'll try and keep your mark on behalf of the state. Ma'am, this is your jury. You may proceed whenever you're ready.
May it please the court, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the time has now come. Over the past 2 weeks, you have heard all of the havoc that Roy Oliver wreaked out there in Box Springs when he took the life of 15-year-old Jordan Edwards. And now the time has come for you to really get to see the man that he is, the evil that lies within the defendant, Roy Oliver. This is the time. During this portion of the trial, you're going to get to hear all kinds of things that you never probably could have thought about Roy Oliver because you don't know the half. But also you're going to hear all of the great things about Jordan Edwards, the young little man, the little boy that was taken from that family, 15 years old, snatched from them for no reason. You're going to get to hear all of the teachers that loved him, his coaches, his family. You're going to get to hear everything that you want to know about the person that was lost on that night. And at the end, we are confident that you are going to know who he is and who Jordan was. And you are going to do the right thing. You're going to hold him accountable for snatching his life. We're confident that you're going to make the right decision.
Mr. Gill or Mr. Brissett, the law will allow you to make an opening statement, or you can reserve your right to do so. What says the defense?
We'll reserve it, Your Honor.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Gill. Ms. Martin, call your first witness, please.
State calls Robert Holwick.
It's H-O-W-I-G.
Sir. Hi.
Yes.
You could please raise your right hand. You don't have to stand up.
Okay.
You could please raise your right hand. Thank you. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
I do.
Very good. Please put your hand down. You're responding to questions from Ms. Martin, who's directly in front of you.
Okay.
And perhaps either Mr. Gill to your left or Mr. Brissett in the middle.
Okay.
Ma'am, you may proceed with that.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record?
Okay. My name is Robert Holwick, and that's H-O-W-I-G, and I was Jordan Edwards' computer teacher.
Okay. Mr. Holwick, how long have you been a teacher?
26 years
Okay. And where do you currently work?
at Mesquite High School.
And is that where you've been for a while?
24 years.
Okay, so 25 years you've been there.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned that you were Jordan's computer teacher.
Yes.
How long were you his teacher?
Well, he was in my class until what happened.
Okay, all right. At the time, was he in ninth grade?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so tell the members of the jury about Jordan.
Jordan was a great student. Made A's in my class. Never a problem. He always had that smile. You saw that picture of Jordan with a smile. That's the way he came to class every day. Just great attitude, smile on his face. He helped out students that were next to him. just a great student. You wish you had 31 of those kids like Jordan in class.
Excuse me, but Your Honor, at this point, I need to interpose an objection. Just any further line of questioning along this line, the victim character evidence is not admissible unless the state of Texas can prove that the person on trial knew the decedent prior to the events in question, which they're not going to be able to prove here. So we object on that ground.
The objection is overruled. I'll give you a running objection to any victim character testimony from this particular witness.
Mr. Howard.
Do I need to make an objection for every witness, Judge?
For each witness, yes, sir. I think that would be the most appropriate thing to do. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. And just before we go any further, I just want to make sure that the testimony that you're giving here today is based on your relationship with Jordan.
In class.
Okay,
Yes,
all right. And no personal knowledge about the particular facts of the case?
No.
Okay, all right. You mentioned that you wish you had how many of Jordans in your class?
31. That's how many computers I have, so I wish I had 31.
And so school is starting now, so I bet that's
Yes,
really, yes,
yes,
okay. All right, very good. Did you ever have any one-on-one conversations with Jordan outside of class or anything like that?
Not too many, no. None that I can recall right now.
Did you ever have any problems with him?
No, never had to provide a referral or anything like that, no.
Okay. Was he respectful in class at all times?
Yes, very respectful.
Okay. Was he yes, sir, no, sir?
Yes, yes, sir.
You mentioned that he helped out the other kids in class. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there was another football player next to him, and when he struggled on certain software issues that we had, Jordan was always there to help him.
Did he seem to enjoy to do that?
Yes, he did.
What about his work? Did he seem serious about his schoolwork?
He did. He made good grades. All A's.
Okay. So no complaints?
No complaints at all.
And can you say that about all your students?
No.
Okay. Let's talk about the day when you found out about what happened. What were you doing?
We were in class. It was just a very sad moment. When we found out, at home, of course I found out.
Sure.
It's just a sad thing, little Jordan's in my class,
Sure. Do you remember how you found out that Jordan had been killed?
I do believe one of the basketball coaches that knew Jordan texted me
Okay.
to get on the news and watch the news.
Okay. And how did that make you feel when you found out it was Jordan?
Just a very sad moment.
Very sad. Okay. Were you surprised?
I was.
Something like that had happened to Jordan.
It's just you don't want to see any of your students,
Sure.
in that situation, but with a good kid like Jordan, it's just even worse.
Tell this jury one lasting impression that you have about Jordan, something that they need to know about the person that we lost.
It's just that Jordan was a great kid. The smile you see on his face, that's the kind of kid he was in class too. Respectful, polite. It was just a pleasure to teach him.
I'll pass the witness.
Cross-examination.
No questions, Your Honor.
Great. Thank you, sir. You may stand down.
Thank you.
Watch your step on the way.
Okay.
Final excuse.
No objection from the State, Your Honor.
Mr. Gill.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Final witness, please.
Thank you. State calls Mr. Ricardo Pelayo. What's the last name? Pelayo, P-E-L-A-Y-O.
Hi. If you would please come to the front of the court. Before you have a seat on the witness stand, watch your step. Please turn and face me and raise your right hand. Swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth. Yes. Please have a seat. You respond to questions from Mr. Martin, who's right in front of you. Perhaps either Mr. Gill or Mr. Brissett to your left. Maybe they proceed with it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Ricardo Pelayo. Last name is P-E-L-A-Y-O.
Mr. Pelayo, what do you do for a living?
I am the lead biology teacher at Mesquite High School, and so I've been teaching science at Mesquite for the last 3 years.
Last 3 years, okay. At some point, was Jordan Edwards one of your students?
Yes, he was my first year there.
Okay, you're there first year, okay. Mr. Pelayo, how long have you been teaching?
Going into my 8th year.
Okay.
This is my
Very good. You enjoy it?
best job in the world. I love it.
Awesome, okay. And before we go any further, I just want to make sure the testimony that you're about to give about Jordan, is that based on your personal relationship with him?
Yes.
Okay, and
Yes, of
nothing
course.
else about the case?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. And so what did you teach Jordan?
So it was biology class.
Okay.
And, probably toughest class for a freshman coming in because it's the STAR tested subject.
Okay, all right. And so how did Jordan, how did he fare?
Jordan was great. He was amazing.
Your Honor, at this point, we need to make our same objection we made earlier.
Yes, sir. So ruled, and you recall it, I'll give you one objection.
Go ahead.
He was a great student. You know, he was quiet,
Okay.
but always, you know, always smiling, always there on time, always met him at the door, and just overall, I mean, even though he was a little quiet, but he was just always smiling, always on point, you know, with things that we were doing in class.
Do you have a little something special you do at the door?
Yeah,
Okay, tell the jurors about that.
I always stand at my door. It's just something that I do. I like to say hi to my students every time they walk in, and so I always say dap it up, you know, because there's a bunch of them walking in, and so always waiting for my students out at the front door. And the class that I was in was actually outside, so my door was to the exterior. So I always was outside waiting for all my students, and as they were coming in, you know, asking them how their day was, you know, dapping them up, or you know, telling them let's get to work.
And would Jordan dap you up?
All the time. All the time. He would always, I would always see him come in through that hallway that was across my room, and he would come down the stairs and just walk straight to me with a big smile and just, you know, dap me up every time.
What type of grades did you make in your class?
He was, you know, A's, mainly A's, you know, some B's, you know, it's a tough subject. But yeah, that definitely did great with his.
Okay. Did you ever have any issues with him? Any behavioral issues, anything like that?
Never. Always, like I said, he was very quiet. So it took a little bit for me to, you know, as our relationship grew throughout the year, it took a little bit for him to open up a little bit, but never had any issues with redirection or having to call his attention for him.
Okay. Always respectful to you?
Always.
Always, okay. Now, tell us about when you found out that Jordan had been killed. Where were you?
I was in church. I'm the worship leader at my church, and I was actually in the middle of thanking the church because my wife was going to have surgery, or had surgery that week after all this happened, and I always put my phone on the pulpit to time myself, you know, not to take too much time, and I had noticed a message that I received from the school saying that we had to have an emergency meeting that day. I didn't know what it was about, so I didn't think much of it. And almost as I was finishing, I received a voicemail from the school as well. So when I was finished, I stepped outside and listened to the voicemail. It was my assistant principal.
Did you get any details on that voicemail or no?
No, any details. Just it was just she said, Ricardo, I need to talk to you about something that happened, and she said one of your students was killed last night, and of course my heart just hit the ground. So I asked who it was, and she said it was Jordan Edwards. And of course I asked, what happened, and she was like, we don't know. She just said, we don't know. At this point, all we know is that he's no longer with us.
And how did you react when you got that news?
My wife had followed me outside. I just broke down. She heard me. I was obviously pretty shattered.
Okay. tell the jurors about the first day presentation that you do now with Jordan as a part of it.
Yeah, I always remind my students that, you know, we never know when our last moment's going to be together, so I always, one of my little kind of mottos is always, since all this happened, and I actually wrote it on my wall because they knocked down that whole building that I was in. My motto is smile like Jordan, because that's all he did. I mean, he lit up the room. Whenever he had issues, you know, it was, Jordan, you all right? And it was always this big smile. And I never really knew if it was, you know, everything was all right, but that's my big thing. I always take a moment to remind my students that, you know, hey, smile like him, no matter what position you're in, no matter how you feel, you're having a bad day, smile like Jordan. So that's always kind of my motto that I use with my students.
And I'll pass the witness.
No questions for
Thank you for your time, excuse me.
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection from the state.
Thank you very much for your step. Ms. Martin, please call your witness.
State calls Anna Lee Polk.
Ms. Polk,
Yes, hi.
you would please come to the front of the courtroom.
Thank you.
Good to stand up here before you have a seat. Please raise your right.
Yes, sir.
You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
Yes, sir.
Please have a seat. Please find the questions from Ms. Martin, perhaps either Mr. Gill, Mr. Pacetto. You may proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your full name for me on the record?
Spell my name.
Yes.
All right. I've not had a spelling test recently. I'm Anna Lee Polk. It's spelled A-N-N-A, capital L-E-E, capital P-O-L-K.
And Ms. Polk, how are you employed?
I am a teacher at Mesquite High School. I teach mathematics, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, college prep.
All the hard stuff, huh? How long have you been a teacher?
I have been teaching in public school for 17 years.
Okay. And how long have you been in Mesquite?
This is my 9th year at Mesquite High School.
School just started?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
How's that going?
Trying to get my teacher legs under me.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And were you one of Jordan's teachers? Were you one of Jordan's teachers?
Yes, I was one of Jordan's teachers. I taught him Algebra 1.
Okay. Tell the members of the jury what you remember about Jordan.
What I remember about Jordan is he was usually the first one in the classroom, and he came in with just a dynamic smile. And when he would walk in the room, one of the first things he always said was, "Miss Polk, what are we going to do today?" He actually acted like he was enthused to be in math class. I don't know, but he actually acted that way. And he would say, "Can I help you do anything? Do you need anything to get ready?" Jordan was a leader in my classroom. He helped others who did not understand when we worked in groups. He was always the leader. He was always anxious to help any student who was struggling. He was a good student in my class, and he was very responsible. I never had to ask him, "Do you have your work done? Are you going to turn it in?" He was always spot on.
Excuse me. Mr. Gill?
We have an objection to victim character evidence.
The objection is noted. So ruled. I'll give you my objection. You may proceed.
Before we go any further, Ms. Polk, I just want to make sure the testimony that you're giving here to the jurors today, is that based on your personal relationship with Jordan and no other factors?
Yes, ma'am, that is true.
Okay.
And Ms. Martin, Mr. Gill, I'll give you running objection to any witness who's testifying about victim character. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, needless to say, I'm sorry, were you about to say something else? I'm sorry, I thought I heard you say something, Judge. Okay. Needless to say, Jordan was a joy to be in your class.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. I would love to have a classroom of Jordan's.
Okay.
It would make teaching so easy.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the day that you found out that Jordan was killed. Where were you?
I was at my home.
Okay.
It was a Sunday afternoon, if I remember correctly, that I got the news. We received, the teachers, we received a text message saying, please come up to our Professional Development Center for an emergency meeting, which is quite unusual, especially not to meet at the high school and to have a meeting at our Professional Development Center. So I knew something horrific had happened, but I did not know what it was until I arrived at the Professional Development Center.
Did you later learn that all of Jordan's specific teachers were called to this emergency meeting?
Yes, our entire staff was called.
Okay.
Mr. Samples, our principal, was very sympathetic to Jordan's teachers. And in fact, he met me outside and said, I'm so sorry that you have to hear this news today.
Okay. And when you found out, how did that affect you?
Shock, dismay, sadness, great loss to our student body, and it's one of those things, you're like, really, this really did happen, and it was hard to take.
Did you see an effect on the students?
Oh, yes. The next several days at school were quite unusual and difficult. The students crying everywhere, needing some sympathy, needing a shoulder to cry on, not understanding why this would happen to Jordan. He was loved, I think, by every student. He was well known. It wasn't, although he was a freshman, it wasn't that the other students, many of them knew him that were juniors and seniors. That smile of his, I think, was a way that it just engulfed everybody. Everybody wanted to be a friend to Jordan, and Jordan wanted to be a friend to everybody else.
I think that you mentioned to me something about his faith in Christ. Are you knowing about it?
Yes, Jordan and I never came out and asked Jordan, do you know Jesus as your Savior? And I'm a Christian myself, and I have a strong faith in Jesus Christ. And I felt Jordan did too. And I felt that I felt like it was, he knew that I was, and I knew that he was, without even having to say anything, because of his mannerisms, because of some of his word choices that he would use on occasion, just some of the things that he said. And so in that respect, we had a connection. That was an unbreakable bond in some respects.
I believe you even spoke at his funeral, is that right?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I did speak at his funeral. They gave us the opportunity to come up. I didn't know the family, but I knew Jordan, and I felt the Holy Spirit asking me to go up and speak. And, it was one of those things that the Bible tells us, always be ready to give an answer. And that's what I wanted to say, because I felt like Jordan was ready to give an answer. And he gave an answer with his life every day in that classroom. And so, yes, that was something that I don't see in every student, and that's something I greatly miss.
As the witness.
No questions, Your Honor.
Should be found excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection from the state.
When you may stand down for excuse from the clerk of service, please watch your step.
Thank you.
Says the state.
Your Honor, the state calls Allie Clemens.
Please feel free to stretch your legs. I know it's been a day or two. Ms. Clemens?
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hi.
We'll just come to the front of the courtroom before you have seat on the witness stand. Please raise your right.
Yes, sir.
Swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth. Please have a seat. Respond to the questions from Ms. Mark.
Okay.
Perhaps you Mr. Gill, Mr. Resetti.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Allie Clemens. It's spelled A-L-L-I, and then Clemens is C-L-E-M-E-N-T-S.
And Ms. Clemens, can you pull that mic down
Yes.
just a little bit? Okay, there you go. Tell the members of the jury what you do for a living.
Okay. I'm a teacher at Mesquite High School. I teach Spanish 2 this year, and I was Jordan's Spanish 1 teacher at the time.
And how long have you been teaching?
This is the 7th year of teaching for me.
And school just started back? How's that going?
It's good so far.
Okay, very good. And so you mentioned that Jordan was one of your students. So before we get started, I just want to ask you the testimony that you're about to give about Jordan. Is it based on your personal relationship with him and no other factors
Right.
About this case at all?
Right.
Okay. Tell the members of the jury about Jordan as a student in your class.
Okay. So I had him in the morning for Spanish. So good morning in Spanish is buenos dias. Every day he'd come in and say, buenos dias, Miss Clemens. He had a huge smile. Just a great kid, always smiling, always joyful. In class, he was a hard worker, definitely. He knew how to help other kids too when they needed help, and he knew when to ask for help when he needed it. Just very respectful. He was always a yes ma'am, no ma'am kind of kid, and just was a joy to be around for sure.
You mentioned to me something about an advisory period that you have in your class.
Yeah.
Tell the members of the jury about that and why it was so significant for you.
I had him during 2A. It was my first class for the day, and during that time of day, our school has a 20-minute period at the end of that class where they listen to the announcements, and then when the announcements are over, we're encouraged to motivate them to read, and they get to read whatever they want, but we kind of motivate them to read. And this was at the beginning of the school year, and I told my students that they could read on an actual book, or if they read on their phone they could, but I would kind of watch if they're reading on their phone to tell if they're just scrolling through social media or if they were actual reading. And Jordan was one of the students that was reading on his phone during the first few weeks, and so I walked up to him and I said, hey Jordan, what you reading? Just because I wanted to check and see what the content was. And he said, I'm reading my Bible. And I kind of laughed because I don't know if you know much about high school kids, but most high school kids they're not brave about reading their Bible in class, and they're definitely not going to tell their kids about it. It's kind of an embarrassing factor. And so I was just kind of shocked that happened. And that for me was it was just a pivotal moment to realize that Jordan always stood out in class because he was just confident in who he was. And I did check, and it was his Bible on his phone. And to me, that's very motivating as a teacher to be brave in your faith like that.
I think you mentioned you never had a problem with him, or he's never disrespectful or anything like that.
No, he wasn't a discipline problem. He was just a good kid. He was just a joy to be around for sure.
Tell the members of the jury about how you found out Jordan had been killed.
I was at church on Sunday morning, and we got a call, or first we got a text from our principal saying that we had a staff meeting that day, and we don't ever have staff meetings on Sunday for sure. So we knew something was up, and then I got a voicemail, so I checked it after church, and our counselor had called to tell all of his teachers that he had been killed. And when she first told us, when she was talking to me on the phone, she said, one of your students has died, and we need you to come to school and or come to the staff meeting, and we want to talk about it. And I asked her, I said, would you be okay telling me who? And she said, Jordan. And it just kind of takes you back, because you're like, that's not a kid who should be dead. So, sorry. So that's how I found out, and we went to school that day. We were just all kind of in shock. Or went to the staff meeting. We were just kind of in shock just because that's not what we expected for his life. That's not what you had in mind for a kid like that. And so the next day at school, I think it was just hard. We took a lot of time to just mourn with the students and just be there for them, just because that's a lot to go through.
And what about his desk and your class? Tell the members of the jury.
Yeah, so his class was my first class of the day. I had an off period before that, and then his first class my first class was his second one. And he had some close friends in there, and he was on the football team, and one of the kids had come in there and wrote his number on his desk, and I don't think we moved the furniture around the rest of the year. The kids just asked, please don't move the room around, please this is Jordan's space, so just keep it Jordan's space. Yeah.
What's one lasting impression that you want to leave with the jury about the person that we lost in Jordan?
I think he was just very joyful. He radiated joy as a kid. He literally did have the biggest smile I've ever seen in my life. So I think just the idea that joy, you still feel it in the school. Sometimes you still feel it when you talk to his friends, that joy is gone. And they're learning to get it back, but there's still a hole there. I still kind of feel it in my classroom. There's still a little bit of a hole there, and that's always something that I think will stick with me as you lose that personality. So, thank you.
I'll pass the witness, sir.
Ma'am,
Yes.
I'm over here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What number was Jordan that was written on the desk?
I think it was maybe 11 or 12. I don't remember, but it was one. I think it was a lower number. And it was. I don't remember because I know he was, I think, a freshman football player, but he was going up, and I don't remember if it was his number from that past year from Pee Wee or if it was another one. But that's what I remember. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Pass the witness, Your Honor.
No further questions.
May this witness be finally excused.
No objection from the state.
Yes, Your Honor.
And you may stand now. Excuse me for the service. Ms. Sloan?
State House Jeffrey Williams.
Mr. Williams? Hi. You would please come to the front of the courtroom. As the witness stands up here, careful on your way up. Sorry, Ms. Good. Yes, sir. And if you could, please, turn to face me and raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? Yes, sir. Please have a seat. We respond to your questions from Ms. Mark, who's right in front of you. Perhaps also either Mr. Gill to your left, or Mr. Gill to the table. May respond.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello,
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
I'm Jeff Williams.
Okay. Mr. Williams, may I have a few words?
Do I have a few words?
Yeah. Totally joking. Tell the members of the jury where you're employed.
Mesquite High School,
Okay. What do you teach?
history.
History. Okay. And how long have you been a teacher?
This is my 38th year.
And you just not gonna give up, huh? You gonna keep going?
Something to do.
Okay. Were you Jordan's history teacher?
Yes, sir. Ma'am.
Okay. No problem. Tell the members of the jury what you know about Jordan. What you remember about Jordan.
Biggest thing would be his attitude and smiles. He's always smiling. That's the biggest thing I can remember right off the top of my head.
What type of student was he?
Very good. I mean, he was a typical teenager, but very good.
Did you have any issues with him being disrespectful to you or
No.
your classmates?
Just on the contrary, the opposite.
Okay.
Never had a problem with him.
Okay. Did he seem to be serious about his schoolwork?
Yes.
How did you tell that?
Because he always helped other people as well as helping himself. I didn't have to tell him twice.
Tell the members of the jury, I'm sorry, before I go any further, the testimony that you're giving here today, is that based on your personal relationship with Jordan and no other factors?
Yeah, in the
Okay.
classroom, yeah.
Okay. Now, as far as when you found out about Jordan being killed, tell the members of the jury what you were doing, how you found out.
I was watching an old movie at home.
Okay.
I got a phone call from the secretary.
And what was the contents of that call?
The secretary had said that Jordan Edwards had been shot the night before. It was a Sunday afternoon, I think I got the call, or Sunday, it was probably noon Sunday.
And how did you react when you got that?
I was surprised.
Okay, why is that?
He didn't come across as somebody who went to parties, but then again, no, it just didn't come across that way.
Now, you don't think anything's wrong with going to a party?
No.
Okay, all right. So, how was it back at school once you all started back with the students?
I'm not sure I can answer that because now I'm not teaching freshmen this year.
No, I mean, when you all got back to school after you found
After
out
that.
Jordan-
Oh, I thought you meant how they're doing now.
Oh, no, sir.
I had 4 to 5 students that were on the same football team as he is.
Uh-huh.
And that was different. We didn't talk about it or tried not to make too much of a single point of it, but it was obvious that some people were very upset in the classroom.
What about his seat?
We didn't, as a class, we just let the seat alone. We just sat around it, left it open.
Okay.
Nobody wanted to sit in it, and I just said, okay, just leave it alone and we'll just leave it blank. And we did for the rest of the year.
Okay. What's one lasting impression about Jordan that you want to leave with the jurors?
Other than the fact that he was a great kid and smiled a lot, and I never saw him have a bad word of anybody else.
Okay.
And for that age, that's good.
All right, I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
No question, Your Honor.
Hey, you can have an excuse.
Yes, Your Honor.
No objection from the state.
Sir, you may stand down, your excuse for any further service. Please be careful. Ms. Martin?
State calls Jenna Williams.
Okay. Williams? So we're just stand up here, if you could please, before you have a seat. Next to me, raise your other right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
Yes.
All right, it's not the first time that that's happened. Please have a seat. We respond to your questions from Ms. Martin, perhaps either Mr. Gill or Mr. Pelayo. May proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Hi,
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
my name is Jenna Williams.
Ms. Williams, I'm going to ask you to move the mic a little bit closer to you. There you go. And what do you do for a living?
I am an English teacher at Mesquite High School.
Okay. How long have you been in Mesquite High School?
I'm starting my 6th year.
Okay. And were you Jordan's English teacher?
I was Jordan's English teacher.
The testimony that you're about to give to the jury about Jordan, is that based on your personal relationship with him
Yes.
and no other factors?
No.
Okay. Tell the members of the jury about Jordan as a student in your class.
Jordan was one of those kids who, honestly, like as a teacher, you could say I would be happy with the whole class of him. He was a great student. He did what he was told. He followed the rules. He was a model student.
What about his grades? What type of grades did he make?
A's and B's. I mean, he always turned in assignments and did well on them.
Okay. What about his manners? Was he ever disrespectful or to you or students?
I never saw the disrespect. Kids really loved him. He had a lot of friends in my class, so they, seemed to get along, and they wanted to sit by him when we changed seats because he was just really likable.
Now, tell the members of the jury about when you found out that Jordan would have been killed.
It was Sunday morning, and my husband and I had just pulled into church, and I got a phone call from another teacher at Mesquite, one of my friends, which I thought was weird because it was Sunday and she was actually calling me. And she asked if I had heard, and I said, heard what? And she said, Jordan was shot. And I was like, what? Because that didn't sound right. And I said, who, Jordan who? And he said, Jordan Edwards. I said, you have the name wrong because there's no way he was shot. And she said that was the case because her husband was a coach, so the coaches found out first. And so she looked up his schedule and saw that I was his English teacher, and since we were friends, she called me, and I immediately started crying, and there was no way I was going into church at that point, so we turned around and went home.
Would it be fair to say you were in shock when you found out?
Complete shock.
Now, tell the members of the jury one lasting impression that you have about Jordan.
Jordan was just one of those kids who you knew was going to go on and do great things. He was, I could see him like going to college and walking across the graduation stage, and I mean, he had a future. He was just going to do amazing things, you could tell.
What about your room, the seats in there?
My class took it really hard. His girlfriend was also in that class period with me, and she and another girl and one of his good friends wouldn't even enter my room. I had to like take their assignments outside or to the crisis counselor, and they did the work in there. And then when people would come in, the last seat that Jordan had, no one would sit in there. And if anyone came in, like a new kid, and tried to sit in it, they would say, like, you can't sit there, that's Jordan's seat. And if anyone tried to, like, stand by it, it was like a shrine to Jordan. No one was allowed to sit in that chair.
Needless to say, students, teachers, everyone was hugely affected by his death.
Yes, completely.
Yes, please.
What's his English?
No, Your Honor, she may be excused.
There you go. Ms. Martin, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
You're on the way down.
Call Judge Doug Skimp, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if you would please come to the front of the courtroom. Where you have a seat on the witness stand, would you raise your right? Swear the testimony you ask me will be the truth. Please have a seat. Do you respond to any questions from Ms. Martin? Perhaps either Mr. Gill or Mr. Bishop to you. Or Mr. Snides. Go ahead.
Judge, please take the full name for the record, spell your first name, spell your last name.
Douglas Skemp, S-K-E-M-P.
How are you currently employed, sir?
I am a judge of County Criminal Court number 3 here in Dallas County.
How long have you been a judge there?
Almost 12, it'll be 12 years at the end of the month, or at the end of December.
And will you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury essentially what your jurisdiction is as a judge of that court?
We preside over Class A and Class B misdemeanors.
Is a frequent part of your docket DWI cases?
It is a very frequent part of our docket.
And how many DWI cases do you think that you presided over in your illustrious career, sir?
As jury trials, probably a couple hundred.
And do you frequently have law enforcement officers who testify for the state of Texas in order to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a defendant is driving impaired?
Virtually every driving while intoxicated trial we have, there's at least one police officer that testifies.
And by the nature of the job, usually these DWIs happen at night.
That's correct.
So officers are frequently tired when they come in to testify in your court, is that right?
Very often.
I want to take you back to October the 30th, 2013, and I'll ask you if you had a police officer testify on that day and act in a very bizarre and unusual manner.
I did.
And would this police officer be the defendant, Roy Oliver?
It would.
And if you recognize him here in the courtroom, could you point to him, please, and identify an article of clothing that he's wearing?
He is the last person raising his blue tie. at the defense table.
Could reflect that the witness has correctly identified the defendant.
Record shall so reflect.
Right. So, you're the judge in the courtroom, and will you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what, if anything, you noticed about the demeanor, the attitude of the defendant during that trial that day?
But generally, with regard to demeanor and attitude, that Mr. Oliver just really did not want to be there. From the get-go, he was very uncooperative with the district attorney's office, from my observation, and from his demeanor on the witness stand right from the beginning, it was clear that he just did not want to be there.
Did he appear to be angry at all, sir?
Yes, I would say that he was not happy.
Did there come a time in which the defendant used an expletive in front of the jury, which I believe you told me you've never heard anything like that before in your career?
Yes, that happened.
Will you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about that?
Some time ago, there was some discussion about the field sobriety tests and a question about clues or how many clues on one of the field sobriety tests, and Mr. Oliver said, basically, what I remember him saying is, I don't understand the fucking question in front of the jury.
The fucking question.
Yes.
Have you ever heard a witness, let alone a police officer, but any witness, say something like that in front of a jury?
I have not before or since.
And did there come a time subsequent to that when you gave the state a certain amount of time for the defendant to come back because he charged off the stand and you were considering holding him in contempt?
My remembrance of it is, and again, it's some time ago, that there was I think we took a break, and he stormed off the stand, and during the break, he exited or absented himself from the courtroom and the courthouse, and didn't look like he was going to be available to continue with his testimony.
Okay. But to be fair to the defendant, eventually he did come back.
Yes, he did come back. I told the district attorneys that Chris Johnson, I think, was the lead attorney that he had. You better get him back here in 15, 20 minutes, or I would have to take some issue with Mr. Oliver, potential contempt, or I would obviously have to strike all his testimony, and this case would fall apart if the defense could not have full cross-examination of the defendant or of the police officer. And as a result of that, I believe they made some phone calls, and he did return.
Okay. And Sean Kedra here provided you with a transcript of that case so that you could verify and refresh your memory as to what you told this jury here today.
That's correct. It was, I don't think the full thing was transcribed, but I believe that the relevant portions were transcribed at the request of the Ball Springs Police Department.
Okay. And just to make this absolutely clear, you've never before or since seen any witness of any kind, law enforcement or otherwise, use a word, and I'm going to say it right now, like fucking in front of the jury.
Well, unless it was quoting something that happened out on the streets that was part of the facts of the case.
Sure.
But other than that, no.
Like I've done myself in this trial. Pass the witness, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Judge.
Afternoon.
Did you take a break from trial to come up here this afternoon?
We weren't in trial today.
Okay, so you have plenty of time to be here this afternoon?
I have plenty of time to be here this afternoon.
Did you want to be here this afternoon?
I'm not opposed to being here. I don't know. 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 I under our canon of ethics, I cannot be here unless I've been subpoenaed, and I've told the state from the get-go that I needed a subpoena if I was going to be here.
And of course, they got you one, didn't they?
They did.
Do you know if they got a subpoena for Officer Oliver for this trial that we've been speaking of?
I have no idea.
What did you do before you became a county court judge?
I was a criminal defense attorney for 31 years,
How much longer are you going to stay on the bench?
till the end of the year.
You chose not to run for re-election?
I chose not to run for re-election.
You mentioned something earlier about Mr. Oliver getting off the witness stand and people needing to get him back. Is that right?
That's my remembrance of what happened, yes.
It was the state that needed him to come back. Isn't that right?
It was the state that needed him to come back, that he was still on the witness stand.
Because they had not finished, they wanted to question him some more, didn't they?
I believe that's true.
So the state had questioned him, the defense had questioned him, and then for some reason the state decided they wanted to call him back. Is that right?
That is, I believe that's correct.
Well, you reviewed the transcript, didn't you?
I have reviewed the transcript, and it's, to be very honest with you, it's not very clear from the transcript exactly when. The transcript that was given to me is not real clear when Mr. Oliver exited. I just remember he did.
And he came back, didn't he?
He did come back.
And you don't know what efforts were made to get him back, do you?
I do not.
You just know that he showed back up.
That's correct.
Is that right? And you mentioned something earlier about having to possibly hold him in contempt because he didn't show back up?
I think I had indicated that someone who is still, has not been released and is still under, has been sworn as a witness and has not been released, if they believe that I would potentially entertain that.
Did you hold him in contempt for using the expletive that you said he used?
I did not.
Did you make a complaint to his supervisors at the Ball Springs Police Department?
I did not.
It's your courtroom, isn't it, sir?
Yes.
Between Mr. Oliver's appearances, did you recess the case, or did you call another witness, or what went on during that period of time?
I think we just sat around and waited. If my remembrance is, that was the only witness the state had, the only witness who testified during the trial.
So it was what we might call a one-witness case, is that correct?
A one-witness case.
Your favorite kind, right?
Yes, it is.
The state got a guilty verdict on that case, didn't they?
They did.
We pass witness.
Judge, is your testimony here based just on what you saw on October 30th, 2013, nothing else?
That's correct.
Pass witness, Judge.
You can be excused.
Mr. Schweitz, any objection?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mark. Stand down.
Call Coach Fleenor.
Yeah, could you please raise your right hand? You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
Yes, sir.
Please have a seat. We respond to questions, Mr. Smith. Perhaps also either Mr. Gill or Mr. Bissett to your left. Mr. Smith, we're going to go until 4 o'clock. This time will take about 20 minutes.
Thank you, Judge. Coach, please state your full name for the record. Spell your first name, spell your last name.
Jeffrey Fleenor, Jeffrey. Fleenor, Fleener.
How are you currently employed, sir?
I'm the head football coach, athletic coordinator at Mesquite High School.
And how many football players do you have that play for you, sir?
Judge?
Yes, sir.
I'm not finding this individual's name on the witness list we were given by the state.
I believe he's on there, Judge, and if somehow I missed that, I would ask the court's leeway to call this coach as a witness. Fairly certain that I did put him on there.
I'll let her testify. Your objection is overruled. It's noted and you have a laying objection to this witness's testimony. Go ahead, Mr. Stein.
Thank you, Judge. How many football players do you have to play for you?
Between our freshman, JV, and varsity teams, we have about 180 to 200 young men.
Are y'all going to be any good this year?
That's the plan.
When's your first game?
First game is Friday night.
And where's that going to be at?
That's going to be at Wildcat Ram Stadium against Lake Highlands.
Okay. And let me ask you, Coach, Sunday, 2 days ago, did me and you meet out at this crime scene together?
Yes, sir, we did.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about that.
Having followed the story and been a part of everything going on, it was actually the first time I had been to that scene. And so first reaction was a lot of emotion, and to be able to get walked through it by you really gave me just some knowledge of what exactly happened that night. It was crazy to me just to see how it looked like a normal neighborhood, and if you hadn't still been able to see the circles on the ground and the paint on the ground, that you would have never known it had been a crime scene.
Circles on the ground that I showed you,
Yes, sir.
that I told you where shell casings had been.
Yes, sir.
All right. So do you remember Jordan Javon Edwards, sir?
Absolutely.
Nickname Smiley?
Nicknamed him Smiley pretty quickly after meeting him.
Okay. And I believe you told me that he actually came and introduced himself to you.
Yes, sir. In fact, the very first day I was at the school, I was actually in the same shirt and tie I have on right now. It was a little different putting that on again today with the different circumstances, but this is what I was wearing the first day I met him. Introduced myself to the team, and coming into a situation where you're brand new and you've got 180, 200 young men looking at you, you're not going to learn all their names on the very first day. But at the end of our athletic period, I went through the weight room to talk to some of the kids that had stayed after to do some extra work in the weight room. And he jumped right up off one of the benches and stuck his hand out and said, "Coach Fleenor, it's great to meet you. My name's Jordan Edwards." Flashed that smile, and it was over after that. I don't always learn kids' name the first time I meet them in a situation like this. This is the second time I've taken a new job, but I knew his name every day after that.
Do you remember approximately when that was that you met him?
Yes, sir. My first day at Mesquite High School was the day after President's Day, so I believe it was February 18th.
2017?
Yes, sir.
He had about 2 months to live then?
Yes, sir. That's something that hit me a lot the Monday afterwards when we had a team meeting at 8 a.m. That was one of the things I told those kids was, if I'm feeling this way, having only known him 6 or 7 weeks, I can't even imagine how those of you that have known him for so long feel. He had that big of an impact on me and on our team and on everybody that knew him.
His family has told me that he had plans to try and really develop his body, get more muscular and stuff, possibly play college football. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about that?
The people describe people a lot of times as having that it factor or that X factor as high school football coaches, and he had all the tools. He had great size, speed, athleticism, but the it factor when we talk about that as football coaches is he had the mental grind. He wanted to be great. He was in there every single day after school. He was always knocking on my door asking to get the speed ladders out. Is the weight room still going to be open? How long is it going to be open? It was a constant daily thing. He didn't just say, I want to go play at Alabama, I want to go play college football. He was in there every single day doing all the things that as a coach you wish every single one of your players would do. When we talk about the things that we've lost not having him around, the impact he had on all of his teammates as a role model and as an example of what the prototype high school athlete that we would want to have on every one of our teams. It was the guy that we say, look at Jordan, look what he's doing every day. He's in here, that's why he's working with the varsity right now as a freshman, going to be sophomore. He's got that extra. He's doing everything that we need him to do to be great.
Number 11,
Number 11, yes, sir.
did y'all do any kind of tribute for him last year by way of decals on your helmets and so forth?
Yes, sir. Every one of our football players in our program wore a JE sticker on the back of their helmet. We also honored him by allowing Vidal to change his number to number 11. And right now we have passed that down to one of his best friends on the team, and he will wear it for the next 2 years. And then we have plans for it to be something that you have to earn the right to be able to wear number 11 at Mesquite High School.
Vidal being his stepbrother,
Yes, sir.
and I believe you told me Sunday that this is still affecting your team.
Absolutely. You know, to have the trial going on the last week, and we had a conversation on the first day of the trial in our team meeting beforehand. I've learned pretty quickly you can't beat around the bush with high school kids anymore. You can't BS them, is what we say sometimes. You just can't do that. And so I believe in being very upfront and talking to them. So we talked about it. We brought all those guys in there, and you know, we're looking at 100 some odd kids in there and telling them, look, I know that the trial is starting. We know that that's going to bring up a lot of emotions and feelings again of everything that's happened, and it's going to make some of you angry. It's going to make some of you sick. It's going to make some of you sad, distraught, want to cry, question, and all we can tell you is it's okay to do any of those things because we're still feeling all those things. There's not many weeks that go by that something doesn't just pop up and make you remember it. We have a tribute for him in his old locker. Nobody has moved into there. It is left the same way it was from the last time he was in there, with the small exception of all of the notes and letters and poems and pictures and excuse me, and things that people wanted to leave for him. And so, while as a football team we need to move on and honor him and play for him, there is still a constant reminder every time our young men go into that locker room. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Coach. Coach, what's your team nickname?
We're the Skeeters.
What do I got to say about that? Go Skeeters. Pass the witness, Judge.
Coach, as somebody that used to wear 11 30 years ago, good luck Friday night. Pass the witness.
So you may stand down.
Thank you.
Right now. If you wouldn't mind, sir, don't leave the courthouse just yet, all right?
Yes, sir.
Take a brief recess, go with the sheriff and wait for the instructions.
All rise.
Thank you, Sheriff. Y'all may be seated. What do you want to do, Joe? You can go outside. Cool, and I would appreciate it. Please don't leave. Y'all may be seated.
Can I have 2 weeks?
I'm sorry, hang on, Mr. Snyder. We're still in session. It's all right. We usually break, and this time we need to take some matter up. The witness is not on the most recent witness. So, Mr. Brissett and Mr. Gill, if at any time before you rest your case you wish to cross-examine that witness or develop any testimony between now and then, all you have to do is ask me and I'll let you do that. I'll grant you leave from court to make sure that you get anything in front of this jury by way of cross-examination of that witness that you need. Is there anything else? Mr. Gill, Mr. Brissett?
Not at this point, Your Honor.
Thank you. Of course, we'll be back at 4 o'clock, please, 10 minutes.